I want to start with just talking about, the biggest challenges that sites like yours have right now. Like what keeps you up at night?
Like it's nothing. What keeps me up at night is nothing really operation. Well, it is in the sense that I'm responsible for my employees and how they handle the studies. So I need it to be as simple as possible for them. And especially when we have new studies, it's very easy to make mistakes. So the last thing you kind of want to do is look for a vendor portal. Like, that shouldn't even be like when sponsors design these trials,
Mm.
that doesn't even come into consideration. Like, oh, yeah, of course we have a vendor for this and a vendor for that and a vendor for that and a vendor for that. At the end of the day, you get like 11 vendors as a site. And these are all like links. It's not like they're in your office. The vendors are there, like, hi, how can I help you? These are links. You have to click different things. You have to remember your login. You have to remember if you did your training. And then on top of it, if you're doing it when the patient's there, the first study visits for any new study take way longer. Ask any coordinator. If a visit's supposed to take an hour and a half, when it's a new study, it's gonna take like 3 hours. The
Yikes.
patient doesn't know any different because it's for them, it's their first visit, so they don't know. But like I've noticed with all my studies in my 17 years, um, by the time the study's going on and you're on patient 12 or even patient 5, you kind of got the hang of it. Things are just a lot quicker. But at the beginning, it's a nightmare. So those kind of things really keep me up at night, like literally, especially when it's a new screening for a new study. You get a little less quality sleep the night before.
Now, what about, so like we talk to sponsors, and one thing we're trying to push them away from doing is they've come up with this idea that, hey, okay, we know there's a lot of technology, the tech stack's growing larger. What if we built our own, like, they call it a single sign-on portal or whatever, right? Let's consolidate these links. Is that helpful? I mean, is that a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these IRTs are already incorporating that. Like the IRT is the EDC, it is the ePro, it is the place where you register a patient. So they're already moving towards that direction. It's gonna be tough when you're throwing in all the other vendors though, like the IRB, labs. So we got a new study, new screening, what happened last week. And luckily it was we had a previous screening, so we kind of didn't have like problems getting through the links because we kind of did a dress rehearsal already. But the lab vendor for this study doesn't send the labs automatically, like to your email. You have to go log in and find them.
Ooh,
So that's just another thing for a coordinator to have to remember. Whereas I prefer if they're emailed to you because then you know, hey,
right.
the labs are ready, right? Right now, I still haven't received them. It's in the back of my mind.
Mhm.
Still haven't received them. So I already know tomorrow when I go to the office, I got to log in somewhere and look for them or tell my coordinator to log in and look for them. So it's just another thing I have to remember. So yes, single sign-on is better. And also with things like labs and ECGs, I mean, those are kind of important. I understand the concern of tech developers is let's not overburden the site with sending them all these alerts because if you get a alert for everything, nothing's important, right? So I think we need to prioritize what we're sending in the coordinator's inbox too. And I think the line in the sand has to be patient safety. Like if it's a lab report,
Yeah.
that's worthy of an email alert. If it's a ECG report, that is too. Certainly, if there's abnormal values, yes, some lab vendors choose to only send you lab alerts when there's abnormal values. I prefer just lab reports, period. But when the IRB updates a new roster, when one of their 12 people on their board is changed to somebody else, like we could care less. Why do we get alerts for that? So there's a fine line between overburdening the site with alerts and sending them what's important. And I think the easy line in the sand is patient safety.
That makes a lot of sense.
I
Um,
think so too.
hey, we hear a lot of sponsors. We talk to them and we try to figure out, what value they want to unlock with the tools they're giving and the challenges they have with sites. And one phrase that, or I guess a term that keeps coming up is like, oh, we want to be the sponsor of choice for our sites. What's that mean to you on the site side?
What that means to me on the site side is a sponsor that is paying me fairly, and we have good relationship with their monitors and higher ups. And honestly, as a business person, I don't want just one sponsor of choice. Like I want many sponsors of choice. We can't just rely on servicing one sponsor. So I appreciate that the sponsors want to make that list, but they have to understand that they're not the only one. And I think that competition is actually good.
Yeah. Well, so what would you tell them? Like, what does it require? Like, obviously, you can work with several sponsors at every site. What
Hmm.
differentiates the ones you really like working with versus the ones that are just okay to work with? Like, how would you tell the ones that are a B to become an A? In that regard.
Budget first. Budget for you have to compensate fairly and start out fairly. We'll always negotiate, but start out fairly. Protocol design. So it's everything that they don't want is what we want. Like they don't want to pay that well. It makes sense. Um, they want more or less to cherry pick because it makes the data look better. We don't want that because we want to service more real world patients. So those are the two big things. Then the third is probably their like, do they use a CRO or not? Um, and then our relationship with the higher ups like medical monitor or study directors or CRA, those kind of things are really important for sites, like to work with the same people over and over again, especially if you like them. Um, those are probably the main things. Like the vendors don't even really come into consideration.
Right. Do you find that you're able to get that kind of direct communication with all the people you mentioned?
With the sponsors I like, yes. Like we're lucky in the sense that we have a few sponsors that are sponsors of choice for us. And they keep coming back to us with repeat studies because we've done well in the past. And then we have other sponsors where I couldn't care less if we got another study from them ever or not. So, yeah, but I do have those relationships with some of those people at the sponsors of choice. That's how we got the studies to begin with. It was a personal recommendation from somebody at the sponsored level. So those are always better than just being another site in the CRO's database.
What's the common thread on those sponsors that don't make your top list that you just mentioned?
Budget,
Yeah.
difficulty of doing the study, like study design, and that's really it, one and two. I mean, usually those sponsors also use CROs and they tend to change the CROs a lot. So you're always working with different portals, different systems. The CROs control what vendors you're going to use. It's
Okay.
not really the sponsor. I mean, the sponsor is allowed to,
Yeah.
but the whole value of the sponsor using a CRO is they don't have to worry about that stuff. So they outsource it to a CRO, but then let's say they want to change CROs because they're not happy with the CRO. Well, now you got to deal with a bunch of new vendors.
Right.
You just learned one set of vendors. You got to learn another set of vendors.
So I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing almost, can correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds to me like your most successful relationships with sponsors are the ones where you have a direct line of communication. You're not working through a CRO. Is that accurate?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I've had good experiences with CROs too. But for the most part, yes, the having that direct contact with the sponsor. You see, the sponsor is paying for the study.
Yeah.
All right. The CRO is getting paid for the study. There's a difference. So
Right.
when I'm calling as a site coordinator, the sponsor, they care just a little more.
Yep.
It's just common sense, and if you work in this industry long enough, you start to see that.
What's your take? I've heard a lot from site owners and coordinators around communication. That comes up a lot. I mean, obviously budget, yes, but direct communication, frequent communication, that comes up number two for most of these types of conversations. And so what are your thoughts on things like the site advisory boards or similar?
I think it's idealistic. I mean, okay, we have a study. It's new, another new one. Not the one I mentioned previously. It's another new one. We have three new studies right now. We haven't screened anyone yet because it's kind of tough to get the patient, but we will get some screenings. So we have like a real CRA that comes to our site, but she's busy, and this CRO set up the structure to where on paper it works. There's like an in-house CRA that helps with the day-to-day stuff remotely. And then your main CRA is supposed to come to the office once every 8 weeks to do a visit. So
Mm,
you have like on paper, it's great because you have two monitors basically. And the monitor, like the real monitor, they're sending her out to God knows how many study visits a month. So we can't even blame her for not answering her phone. So
okay.
that means the in-house CRA is there to answer day-to-day questions. So my coordinator, who's brand new, I'm not making this up. Last week she called the in-house CRA and said, "Hey, yeah, I actually do." The in-house CRA always says, "Hey, let us know if we can help you with anything," all that good stuff you brought up. She said, "Okay, well, yeah, we have a screening coming up, and can you just briefly walk me through like all the vendors that I have to go through for the first visit?" And that this person didn't know how to answer it, meaning they understand the study from a protocol level.
Right.
They don't understand it from a doing it level. And the only one who does is overburdened and going probably has like 20 sites.
Right.
So that's communication. All right. That structure,
Right.
a big fancy CRO created that. And they're bragging about it to sponsors. And that's the outcomes. So anytime I hear this advisory communication, it's nonsense. This is the person that I'm asking for help able to help me on a practical level. And most of the time, the answer is no.
Are you ever able to like get this feedback back to the CRO or the sponsor in a meaningful way where you think it'll be acted on?
No, no, because why? You don't want to complain. Because if you do that, like if I were to do that, if I were to make noise about this and say, hey, your in-house CRA doesn't know what she's doing, which is not fair to her. She does know what she's doing. She doesn't know how to get in the trenches and actually do it. She knows in theory like what needs to be done.
Right.
If I made noise, the fear is that the CRO is gonna not give me studies in the future. Like, oh no, they're gonna label me a problem site. Let's not work with them in the future. So I don't want that. So
Yeah.
I have no incentive to complain. I could
That's tough
complain on
though.
LinkedIn like Brad does.
Yeah.
But as far as like directly complaining, because nobody knows who we're talking about. No one knows who I'm talking about here
Right.
except my coordinator. So why would I do that? Like it's as a business owner, that's like a stupid strategy.
But that's sad. That's a little depressing because ultimately the sponsor probably would want to hear that feedback. And honestly, probably the CRO too, to some degree, because they want to, let's say, they hypothetically want to improve their processes. But I hear what you're saying. There is that
They
risk.
they wouldn't improve it for one site. One site that's speaking up. Most of the sites they have more experienced coordinators, so they're not asking those kind of questions to
Right.
their in-house CRAs because that's a whole another thing. When you're like an experienced coordinator, you're either jaded and so you're like, no, I know how it works. I got to figure it out on my own. That's where
Right.
I'm at. But my new coordinator is like, oh yeah, maybe this person actually can help us. Because I mean, we were struggling like for 2 hours in the office trying to do a mock visit, and we were trying to piece together Okay, what happens next? What link do you click on after this process? What link do you click on here? And we couldn't figure it out. I mean, we know like 85% of it. Um, but most experienced coordinators are not asking those things. So the sponsors are not getting this feedback. The only time they get some semblance of this feedback is either LinkedIn with Brad or me complaining, or podcasts like this if they're actually listening, or
Yeah.
like conferences where like SCRS, really only the best sites go there. Like, so you're not hearing from the regular sites. So no, and I don't know really if the CROs want to hear this. I mean, I think it works. They have every incentive to make it work just well enough to where complaints are at a minimal level, and I think that's the status quo right now.
Now, what about when I think about like VersaTrial, would you be more comfortable giving feedback if you knew it was anonymized and maybe aggregated with lots of other sites like yours that maybe could, shake some feathers loose?
Yeah. If it was an easy process, yeah. Like even then, yes, if it was anonymized, maybe, but it would really only be the extreme pain points.
Yeah.
Like this example I brought up is not really an extreme pain point. Like I would have never brought this up to anyone else, probably ever. But since you asked, and I got the caffeine flowing through my veins, it came up, right? But it's not something that like bugs me, like, oh, I hate this
Right.
fact, So I don't know. I mean, probably the biggest issues you would get, but that's still just the tip of the iceberg of the issue. Like you would only uncover the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to get to is a more ongoing, intelligently designed pulse survey where if you're using VersaTrial, it's part of your workflow, because VersaTrial is supposed to make things easy, not add, layers of complexity. And it'd be great to be able to ask every 2 weeks, like, hey, how is this going? How is this trial going? And be able to aggregate some of the feedback from other sites that you don't even know are working on this trial to see if you have similar issues. And they could be, hey, I'm having a hard time logging into the system, or hey, this is broken, or hey, this is pissing me off. And we think in aggregating that feedback, right, then you can make it bigger, right? You don't have to be like the biggest site network that the sponsor is working with to say, hey, this is affecting a lot of us, right? Maybe it's a little problem, but it's affecting a lot of sites the same.
So yeah, I mean, it's smart. It's to be the facilitator of efficiency and site satisfaction. Um, it would have to be advertised like so much that it's anonymous because sites are afraid. And even if you said that, some sites still wouldn't believe
Yeah, I
you.
know.
So like it's still not honest feedback and it's still not complete, but it's a step in the right direction. But then from an operational standpoint, you have to ask yourself, do sites need another survey to do? And so I don't know how you would like implement that to make sites actually want to do it. We get surveys all the time about, I mean, I can't even do my feasibility surveys fast enough, and those mean money. Like
Well, hey,
those
I mean,
mean
hopefully
instant
with
money.
with our feasibility questionnaire assistant, hopefully that could be something that really reduces that burden for you.
I mean, yes, I think it could work. It's just like anything else in this industry, how you execute it is the key.
Yeah.
Because others have been trying to do this too. Like CROs try to get feedback and they send survey monkeys. I think I got one recently. For a study that just ended, how did our CRA do? How did our CRO do? I didn't do it. I didn't I didn't have time. I just saw it in my inbox. I was like, yeah, I mean, I could show you my book of things I have to do. I write things down that I have to do, and
Probably
I'm
like,
like days behind. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not doing that.
Right. Well, we're hoping to make it like a one question, within the workflow. So there's no email. It's just if
I
you're
see.
versatile, right? That and quick, right? Like 1 to 10, boom, move on back to what you were doing. Um,
Yeah.
just back to versatile. I know you're like onboarding it. It's still not like part of your life, but the interesting thing here, like, there's no successes to share yet, but we talked about it a little bit earlier, but like tell me from your perspective, like what excited you about the premise, right, of VersaTrial? Why did you decide that, hey, this is something we're going to actually invest time in?
I like that it's shared amongst our team. So if Katie, who's my CRC, makes a study workspace and she puts the links there, I could add links to it and then she'll see it. So if somebody forgets something, we have it. So the premise is it's collaborative on our end. And it to me, it's like an insurance policy. Like, hey, I know if I could just click this button, as long as we're maintaining it, that everything's there. I don't have to guess where's this link. To me, that's been the hardest part of running a trial, especially a new one, is like, where's these links? Like, okay, I understand I have to go to this portal. Where is it? I don't know. I have to look it through my email now to find it. So that to me, that alone is like worth having it. But also the fact that when I update it, my staff sees it too, and vice versa. So, like to me, that's like the cool part. Like you can't really do that with Evernote, at least easy, and it's not as clean. So that's the premise. Like that's the value add. As soon as I heard about it, I had Katie get on it right away. She's like our in-house technical person.
Yeah. Well, I think what do you think about once we add, and it's coming like now, the password manager layered on top within that? Is that going to solve a big challenge for you guys?
Yes, Katie already is talking about that. Um, And for me, I'd probably have to sign out of my regular Gmail and sign into my Yuma Clinical Trials email for that to make sense. I think the way I understand it, but um, yes, if it helps my staff, it's gonna be great because they like she already said that that's a big thing.
I like from your perspective, you mentioned feasibility questionnaires, which we hear like the most amazing testimonials have come from business development teams where they're like, "Oh my God, this is going to save me like just unbelievable amounts of time, almost too good to be true." That's what they've literally said. But you seem kind of skeptical about it. Why? Have you been like
Well,
overpromised on things like before, or?
no, I have no idea. I had no idea Versatrial's used for that. I thought it was just like once you get the study.
Oh, so yeah, no, we have VersaTrial's two parts. Study organizer, which is what you and I are talking about with Katie and the links and the password.
Okay, okay.
And the other tool is FQ Assistant. And
Oh,
F
we're not using that.
oh, I got to talk to Mike then because
All right.
what FQ Assistant does is it's the same extension. You're not downloading more crap, but when you go and fill in that Survey Monkey feasibility questionnaire or whatever other software whatever link they're sending you to fill in an FQ, VersaTrial saves that answer. And next time, and we can
Hmm.
even preload it. If you give us like some people have historical, like an Excel or PDFs. Now, next time you load up an FQ, it slides in and it's like, hey, I know the answers to this. Sort of like a
Wow.
pass will pipe in your password and log in. You know how
And
those
that's
things?
free?
Yeah, it's all part of the same thing.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, that'd be awesome because that's mainly what I do. Like
Yeah.
when we started the site, I was the coordinator and I had to relive all that frustration. But now I have coordinators, so I'm back to doing like the more traditional site director role of feasibilities and things like that. So yeah, I didn't even know. I had no idea.
Well, as soon as I hang up with you, I'm gonna go tell Mike to bug you. We can get that turned
We
on.
might we might have it turned on. It's just Katie. Maybe Katie doesn't know because she doesn't deal with that. So, it just fell through the cracks.
Well, it sounds to me like that could be, that
That's
knowing how
awesome.
long feasibilities are, I think you'd really enjoy that. And then we could have another call about how how happy you are with that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that, but that's good for the audience to know if they're watching because I had no idea.
Yeah, that's I think that seems to be one of the more, obviously it's two sides of the house, right? Sites are split down the middle, right? The
Yep,
the the business development side is like, great, I don't care so much about passwords, but you'll help me autofill feasibilities. That's what I want. So
I love it. Yeah, you guys seem to have the end user in mind, which is I think this is the key. Like my sponsor, Viva,
mhm.
who you guys are not really competing with in any way, they understand also like free. Give sites, let's empower sites, e-regulatory for now. They're gonna come up with all kind of stuff later, but e-regulatory, sponsor subsidizing it. Let's make the coordinator's life easier, and that's gonna win in the long run. I think you guys are following that same strategy. I mean, it makes sense. It's just very costly. and
Yeah.
time consuming.
Well, so on that note, like I have one last kind of question, and then I'll cut you loose. We want to keep this free for sites forever. That's like a non-negotiable. But obviously, that means that we need pharmas to see the value in it. And yes, they do
Yeah.
see other. They get to see some cool data. They get to connect and enable the sites and communicate with the sites. But what can we say to them on your behalf that you think will inspire them to act and say, yeah, you know what, I want to put some money behind this to provide this for my sites?
So I don't think sponsors know a lot of the pain points. And like we kind of alluded to earlier, I think they hide behind the CROs.
Mm.
Not so much because they don't want to make life easier for sites, but they're paying the CROs. So when it comes to like these complex problems, they tell the CRO, hey, that's what we're paying you to do. So fix it. And the CRO says, don't worry, we got this. And then when the site actually asks them a question, they're like, yeah, refer to the lab manual. Who wants to go through that thing in the middle of a visit and read like what you have to do when somebody should just tell you like, okay, this is kind of what you need to be doing. And that's what a good CRA does. So you can take it one step further with the vendors. Like, how do we access these vendors? Well, this is the training you got to do. Like some of these people don't even know the process of like, if I want to randomize a patient, what vendor do I go to? If I want to assign drug, what vendor do I go to? They just kind of know they at the CRO and sponsor level, it's all taken care of by someone.
Mm.
And when they truly don't know how to walk you through, because to really know something, you have to be able to explain it on the fly. And most don't because they're overworked. So they'll just refer you to the study operations manual, which is not that helpful when you need like an instant answer. So I see Versatrial as like taking out some of these steps by having things there outlined. I think the next step would be like the next evolution of this would be like a cheat sheet for the visits. Like visit one, these are the
Mm.
these are the vendors you need. You're kind of making the cheat sheet because we do that anyway. So we have visit one. This is the first thing you do. This is the link. Visit, and then it's this, and then it's this link, and then when it's time to check the lab results, you click on this link. So I think Versatrial is, if you get enough traction, you're already naturally like able to do this. The issues there become around liability. Do you want to make a cheat sheet? Like how far do you actually want to help sites? Because if a site screws up or somebody screws up on your end, they can just blame you. Well, Versatrial said this is the order, we got to do it in. So that's what we want, but I understand why they don't do it. And even CROs to some extent, they don't want to take the liability. They want to just say, refer to your site operations manual.
Right.
So nobody wants to help too much because they could get in trouble, but they want to help just enough to where it's like CYA.
Yeah, I think what you're describing, you're kind of getting into like the digital protocol side of the world, like the proof pilots,
There you go.
that kind of stuff.
Joseph Kim, good dude.
Yeah, Joe Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Dan, Farah, this is awesome. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate all your insights.
No,
Merry
thank
Christmas.
you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, happy holidays. Thank you very much. I
Yeah,
like
man.
what you guys are doing.
I appreciate it. And then we'll get you set up on the FQ assistant ASAP. So
I had no clue. Thank you.
take it easy, man. Thanks.
Bye bye.